cannot back off. Russia, when backed in a corner, has proven in history that you do not mess with them. Russia, like South Africa, is facing a barrage of lies, constant lies about Russia. The media constantly lie about Russia. Russia is also the only European nation to accept farmers to their country. No Western country has assisted white South Africans but Russia. Russia came to the Boers' aid back in the Boer War. Russia has had its issues, but when Russia make a deal with you, they stick to their deal. The West, as you know, stabbed South Africans, white South Africans, in the back with their lies, propaganda, while saying absolutely nothing about the failure of the new South Africa. They have said nothing about the 116 race-based laws. They prop up the ANC at every turn and to this very day, continue lying about South Africa. Russia faces today the same lies heaped onto it as South Africa. Yes, there were problems with apartheid, but apparently the new sport among liberals in South Africa is to sit around candlelight and discuss and the dark days of apartheid. The media in South Africa do not actually report on things going on in the country. News 24 lie continually about the state of South Africa. They talk about irrelevant topics that have nothing to do with the future or well-being of the country, and you find your usual intellectual blind liberal whites posting garbage about South Africa. I hope they enjoy their candlelight dinners and discussions about the dark days of apartheid. I hope they have stocked up on candles, but then again, knowing what kind of morons liberals are, the only candle they probably have is the one burning in front of them. While Russia is in the news, China is buzzing their jets around Taiwan. Ships sail the Pacific Ocean doing drills. Russia now, with the backing of China, is not going to be easy for America to deal with. When NATO collapses, hence why the seer mentioned what he did about the selling out of the West by a specific country. They are so scared with what they see happen with Russia that even they decide it's not worth risking it. Germany is playing a cool game, straddling the line, not getting involved, while stalling everything, putting everything in their odds. When the first sign of war starts, watch how the European nations, like we have seen Croatia do, suddenly say no thanks, this is not our war. Do you think the West can take on Russia without going the nuclear route? I highly doubt it. As the Dream Vision mentioned, only 25% of America is left. The seer said it would be an insignificant player on the world stage in the future. Russia is in full control of the show, make no mistake about it. Silence is golden. While the media are focusing on Ukraine, trainloads of equipment pours into Belarus. Step 1 is complete and completing before our eyes. Before those lines of rockets I saw in the Dream Vision all point to Western Europe. So many will there be that it looked like rows of fences pointing to Europe. I saw them as one sees archers in the Middle Ages lined up, all ready to fire in the air. Nothing will stop them when it begins to happen. The media cannot or will not be able to now switch gear and focus on Belarus and the build-up there. The Russians will call out their fake media saying they are being accused of invading and nothing has taken place. The Russians are letting the media's propaganda desensitize the public. The public will be worn to the point of exhaustion and will not believe anything will happen, and then it will begin. The Russians have been pushed to the edge. When they come out to fight, they are going to storm Europe. They cannot play a slow game. The seer mentioned Russia returns to its old ways. The old ways of rolling into countries, taking them over as they did in the former Soviet Union, and the worst part is, this time with all the economic collapse in the West, the failings of the EU, the migrant crisis, it might even come as a sigh of relief for those countries. We see Polish weapons being delivered. The Dream Vision from last year, where I heard POW when I asked what is POW, the words came, Polish weapons. I said I was shown in the dream, Boris Johnson putting on military gear and Britain getting ready for war. Well, we see their weapons going to Ukraine, we see their statements. Very reckless statements. The West accuse Russia of doing what they are doing. The only non-Ukrainian troops in Ukraine are Western, NATO troops. Russia has every right to put as many troops within its own territory as it likes. They would not have done this if NATO kept to their agreements, but as mentioned, the Russians knew full well they would never stick to their agreements, which is why they never asked for written guarantees but simply wanted that handshake and verbal guarantee. The West are dealing with the greatest of minds, the greatest chess players, and Russian forces are larger than the country of Lithuania and Latvia combined. To think their standing army alone is the size of two nations' populations is mind-boggling. Further add their military strength, their weapons, this is not going to end well when it begins to kick off. The fact that they are silent should tell you something, it tells the West. When Russia laid out their red lines, the West went into high gear. By doing this, the West played their hand, they showed their cards. They told the Russians what the Russians knew they were going to do, and so the stage is set, hence step 1, Krakshikshanovo had to take place. Now they spread the NATO forces thin, they just opened up a new front, while strengthening Kazakhstan. Now I want to discuss a few other things. You know the Bible tells us to build our house upon the rocks. I will tell you, you must also be aware of what rock lies beneath you. If you are building or attempting to build your house upon a golden rock, filled with diamonds, filled with all kinds of minerals, then you should know that if the elites suspect or sniff out that you are attempting to build anything remotely that affects or could impact the golden rock, you best be aware. In such cases, not only do you have to build your house upon the rock, but the house needs to be invisible, unless you want trumped-up charges, heed the seer's words. I am convinced many of the petty infighting we see about Boers, Afrikaners, a lot of this is done by agents, provocateurs to divide the people. See through the division, see through the enemy's tactics. Why argue about petty things? When the house is burning, you do not argue, no point in getting into arguments or trying to settle the score. Unless you wish your house to burn down along with all your possessions, put away the petty nonsense, the big picture is important. God has put the nation on a golden rock to test the nations, for their lust of gold will and does drive them. When it comes to things picking up in the world, it is important to be as self-sustained as possible. No matter where you are in the world, join communities, groups, or form groups, support groups. If you are in the cities, form groups that can assist you there and have options, the more options the better off you are. I know the groups themselves are a bone of contention, people say join city groups, others say join groups to get out. Why not join both? I do not see them as different groups, but groups looking out for the people with different opinions. Different opinions are fine, so long as you do not pit one group against the other. Contribute. If you are in the city or out of the city, join the groups, see things from a different perspective, you never know what can happen, and the more options, the wider your support group, the better off things will be for you. All I would say is, avoid the arguments and rather contribute the best you can. There are so many petty people that all they seem to do is want to argue and argue about things which make no difference in the grand scheme of things. Plan for the future. When I say the following, people get really annoyed. I say plan for the next 200 to 400 years or more. If you can plan that far ahead, today's mountains will seem like little speed bumps on the road to freedom. Yes, the Messiah could come at any time. Until that day, build the kingdom, build in the name of the Almighty for His purposes, dedicate all to the Most High, may the Almighty see our plans, your plans established. I was watching the celebrations of the Battle of Island Luana in Zululand. One thing I picked up from the event was the constant talk of the Inganyama Trust. I heard it brought up no fewer than 8 or more times by the new upcoming Zulu king. With the government taking billions more from the IMF, the land will have to be pledged with all its assets. That trust is going to have to go, and when the trust comes into play, along with the other land question, this is when the issues begin in Parliament, the seer mentioned. The new Zulu king seems very passionate, more so than ever than the previous king. What makes him more interesting is the challenge to his throne. See, he is having to fight internal battles, and if you know anything about Zulu culture or black culture in South Africa, everything is about initiation.